At Arizona State University, we've made online education better, smarter, and more personalized, so you can go further in your aspiring field.
I decided to pursue medicine once I realized that ASU did have the online program for biological sciences. You're still required to learn the same curriculum. You're still being tested on the same content that anyone would be tested on in person. The comprehensiveness of the program prepared me so well for medical school.
Explore over 350 plus programs at asuonline.asu.edu.
So I wanted, before we get started, to let everyone know that I have a new podcast out, and it's called Meditations. If you like the Meditations segment of this current podcast, you'll like the Meditations podcast. It's nothing but 20 minutes of meditative sounds. And now, on with the podcast.
Americans love scenery. We want to see it all, from one coast to the next, Mount Rushmore down to the Everglades. So hop into a Chevy Malibu and take the scenic route. It's the car you knew America could build. There's a place where people count on friendships they can trace back generations, where they can count on the same stool at the coffee shop waiting for them every morning. This place is called Glen Ellen, and you can find it in every bottle of Glen Ellen wine. This is craft brewed Herman Joseph's, the smoothest, easiest drinking specialty beer in the entire solar system. And I believe you'll find drinkable in the dictionary right after don't order a beer you can't drink. Zoingo! Boingo! The freestyle pogo with more boing, more bounce. Bounce further, bounce higher with Zoingo Boingo. To see what makes Arrowhead Mountain Spring water different from those other waters, you have to go back to the source. And with Arrowhead, that means going back a little farther and longer than most. Between security challenged and security strengthened, there's one important word: how. And it is the how that makes all the difference to our nation and our world. Lockheed Martin. We never forget who we're working for. What makes Kraft Singles so good? 2 out of every 3 kids don't get the recommended amount of calcium. But with Kraft Singles, they get a good source of calcium and the taste they love. Kraft Singles. Magic every single time. Throw boring overboard with a new real meal from Long John Silver's. A meal worthy of a plate, just $4.99. Only at Long John Silver's. We may not all be geniuses, but we can all do something smart. Introducing the Hyundai 199 Sonata Lease. It's a smart deal on a really smart car.
Any people think fat people fat because we don't got gym memberships? We do. We do. I got 2 right now. I got all the equipment that's ever been on an infomercial. I got ab rollers. I got a shake weight. I was using it too. I like, yeah, this. Fucked around and walked by a mirror like, hell yeah. I threw that shit under the bed. Absolutely not. I did P90X. I was sweating like a motherfucker. And he was like, that's the warm-up. I was like, excuse me? I'm done. I just did the P. I have to come back and get the 90 tomorrow. Yeah, damn.
Good morning. It's Wednesday, Apollo Wednesday, July the 23rd, and this is The True Conservative. Welcome to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. I'm Ron, your host, and the only true conservative in the United States today. So today, after the Serenity Prayer and the patriotic song of the day, we will have headlines, patriotic short, motivation, Bishop Barron, Ayn Rand, and Apollo. All that and more when I get back. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I should not change, the courage to change the things I should, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen. Thank you. And now, the headlines for Wednesday, July the 23rd. Breaking news. Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard released a new report that she says provides further evidence of former President Obama's involvement in the Russia hoax of 2016. Philippines President Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos Jr. said, "Our strongest, closest, most reliable ally has always been the United States." Breaking, the U.S. Olympic Committee has officially banned men from competing in women's sports. Elon Musk, history is written by the victors. Well, yes, but not if your enemies are still alive and have a lot of time on their hands to edit Wikipedia. In solidarity with Colbert, Jimmy Kimmel vows not to tell any funny jokes until Late Show is reinstated. California high-speed rail is a project that will never be built. Signs are being put up around the Pacific Palisades urging Mayor Bass to resign. And those are the headlines for Wednesday, July the 23rd. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now, Desi Arnaz Jr. in the political corner.
My first job in this country was cleaning bird cages. It's very true. We came to this country and we didn't have a cent in our pockets. From cleaning canary cages to this night here in New York, it's a long ways. And I don't think there's any other country in the world that could give you that opportunity. I want to say thank you. Thank you, America. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, the patriotic short.
This is where we hold them. This is where we fight. This is where they die. And these shields, boys. Remember this day, man. It will be yours for all time.
And that was the political short. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, a little motivation.
You got a forest and you got a garden. What's the difference between the two? Listen to me. Stuff grow in both of them. But the difference is, in the forest, it's just wild, uncontrolled stuff all over the place. And the garden is beautiful because why? In the garden, it's somebody who did something very intentional, very deliberate. They line this up. They line that up. They planted this. They planted that. They put a fence around. Are you hearing what I'm saying? Many of you, your life is like a forest right now. You all over the place. And that's why you'll never be what you want to be. That's why you'll never have what you want to have. That's why you'll never accomplish what you all over the place. And your problem is you're not intentional and deliberate. You wake up on Monday and you might be strong, but by Wednesday, you are hoping that the best is going to happen to you, and the best never happens to you. Everything that's good to you ain't good for you. I've learned that you got to pass up on good to get to great. You got to give up good opportunities sometimes. There's some good cause with some good money, but I prefer to stick with my passion. I would prefer to stay laser focused. And some of you in your life, the reason why you're not blowing up, the reason why you're not successful, you have not learned to pass. You think just because it's an opportunity, it's for you. And not every opportunity is for you. You got to get to the spot, baby. You got to do what you was called to do. You got to do what you were born to do. You got to do what works for you, because if you do what works for you, you're going to blow up. Winners don't focus on not losing. Winners focus on winning. They make winning the goal. Today, I got to win. You got to decide that you're going to do something, and you got to do it every Monday, every Tuesday, every Wednesday, every Thursday. I'm asking that the 24 hours in your life be very intentional, very deliberate, that you be very strategic. You're very deliberate about what time you wake up. You're very deliberate about what time you go to bed. You're very deliberate about what you eat, what you don't eat. You're very deliberate about the people you bring in your life. You are very deliberate about the books that you read. You're very deliberate about what you watch on television. You are very, very focused, intentional, and deliberate. You concentrate on this opportunity. You don't worry about tomorrow. You concentrate on this opportunity with all your might, with all your soul, with all your heart. You focus on this, and tomorrow will take care of itself.
Write things down. Monitor what your thoughts are, what you're feeling, what you're experiencing, what you're going through each day, staying on top of you. Have pictures to reinforce this thought, this vision that you have in your mind of where you want to go and what you want to do. As you talk about it, don't just talk about it casually, but feel it. Look at your goal. See yourself there. Experience the applause. Experience the feeling of achieving the goal, of making the decision, or overcoming the challenge, or having your own business. Experience the glory, how you feel inside when you can say, I did it. See that happen. No one else can see that but you.
You have to harness your mind. You have to train your mind.
Learning the art of becoming single-minded. Learning how to concentrate. Learning how to focus in. And you'll be surprised of the things that you're able to do. When you learn how to block things out, when you learn how to keep thine eyes single, you'll be surprised of the ideas that will come to you, of the opportunities that you'll be able to see, of the people that you'll be able to attract. So you've got to work on it. When other folk are having a good time, you've got to have the strength of character to concentrate, to read, to digest information.
Live your life. Focus on your intentions and do your thing. Most of my friends are driving crazy because I'm so specific and so bold with my visions and my intentions. Even if they tried, they couldn't get me off my path. And that makes people very uncomfortable, because when you see the invisible, you're able to do the impossible. Don't get caught up in the clubs, drinking, smoking, because guess what? You are not regular. So stay your ass in the gym, stay focused on them books, stay in your college dorms.
Stay the course. Are you hearing me? Stay the course. Focus on what you do well.
You gotta put in the time, the dedication, the work ethic, and see it through from the start. Don't get hung up on the daily ritual ups and downs of how you're feeling and everything else. Keep your eyes on the horizon. Stay focused on where you want to go. And don't let anyone tell you any different. It's all within your two hands. You grab that wheel of life and you drive it to where you want to go. I'm asking that you don't give up. I'm asking that you ignore text messages and phone calls where they're trying to pull you away from your focus, and go to clubs and hang out. Be obedient to the visions, the ideas. Move on them.
Concentrate on the moment. When you specify your aim, the pathway makes itself manifest. So if you aim upward to the best of your ability, then the pathway upward is what will make itself manifest in front of you.
Win the mother-ing day. Not that month or that week, just the task for that day. That's it. These can be things as simple as sending a certain email. These can be things as simple as getting in a workout. These can be things as simple as reading 10 pages. Identify the critical task you need to do and complete them every day to move toward your ultimate dream life. And when you start doing this, you're going to figure out real quick that this is how you live a life of productivity. This is how you live a life of excellence. This is how you live a life of significance.
And that was motivation. Back in a minute. Thank you, and now a little bit of meditation. Thank you, and now the Daily Stoic.
Marks of the good life. You have proof in the extent of your wanderings that you never found the art of living anywhere, not in logic, nor in wealth, fame, or in any indulgence. Nowhere. Where is it then? In doing what human nature demands. How is a person to do this? By having principles be the source of desire and action. What principles? Those to do with good and evil. Indeed, in the belief that there is no good for a human being except what creates justice, self-control, courage, and freedom, and nothing evil except what destroys these things. Marcus Aurelius, Meditations 8.1.5.
And that was the Daily Stoic. And now, His Excellency Bishop Robert Barron.
We do indeed have within Christianity a tradition of referring to Jesus as master or teacher, and to those of us who follow him as disciples or learners. And that's altogether right. But here's the problem. All sorts of other religious figures could be seen as a master who have disciples. Even someone like Socrates, the philosopher, could be seen as a teacher who has disciples or followers. Disciple from discere in Latin just means to learn. Nothing wrong with that when it comes to Christianity, but it doesn't go deep enough. Because in Christianity, we have not simply a relationship of student to teacher when it comes to Jesus. Rather, we participate organically in him. Let me say that again. He's not just our teacher, not just our moral exemplar, not someone we simply imitate from a historical distance. We live in him. We are rooted and grounded in him.
And that was His Excellency Bishop Robert Barron. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now, psychopathy.
Machiavellianism is a personality trait characterized by cunning, manipulation, and a willingness to use deceit for personal gain. It often emerges from a combination of genetics and life experiences. Individuals with Machiavellian tendencies typically exhibit traits like manipulation, lack of empathy, and a desire for power. If someone recognizes these symptoms in themselves, they may seek professional help, such as therapy or counseling, to address these traits and work towards healthier interpersonal relationships and personal growth.
And that was psychopathy. Back in a minute. A little bit of Maria, then Stu Varney.
Welcome back. 30 minutes before the opening bell sounds on Wall Street. We get a nice rally underway. Markets at the highs of the morning with the Dow Industrials up 235 points right now. Let's get some final thoughts. Adam Johnson.
Maria, I am thrilled with the trade deals that are being announced at 15%. We can live with that. That's not a problem for corporate earnings. It's one reason stocks are up. Absolutely love it.
Yeah, Ashley Davis.
I am 50 years old from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I have to do a moment of silence to Ozzy Osbourne for making my life, my high school years, so good.
I like that. That's great. And he was such a family man. I love what a family man he was. He is. Was.
Good on Tulsi Gabbard for finally releasing to the American people the extent of the Obama deep state's corruption and how they conducted the witch hunt against Trump.
Yeah, but Caroline, are we really going to see accountability here? Is somebody going to get indicted over this?
Well, listen, I mean, you mentioned the Hillary Clinton email scandal before. Think about how Mar-a-Lago, Trump's private residence, was raided under the classic document scandal. She wasn't investigated or prosecuted by former FBI Director Comey.
You mean when she put a baseball bat to the mail server in her
basement? And what I was told was they raided Mar-a-Lago because they were looking for these documents. They wanted to hide them further. Thanks, everybody. Great show. Great to be with you. Have a good day, everybody. Varney and Company picks it up. Stu, take it away.
All right. Good morning, Maria. Good morning, everyone. It took months of intense and detailed negotiations, but the U.S. and Japan have clinched a trade deal. The Japanese needed it. The August 1st deadline is fast approaching. Tokyo didn't want a trade shock, especially since recent elections left Tokyo in political turmoil. This is the deal. 15% tariffs on Japanese goods coming to America. 15% on autos, too. Big money coming here. The deal includes a $500 billion investment package. Treasury Secretary Bessent, interviewed earlier this morning, was positive about a deal with China. He meets Chinese negotiators in Stockholm shortly. He says the talks with China, quote, are in a good place, his words. Investors love all of this. Look at this. The Dow Industrials, NASDAQ, and the S&P, all on the upside, all in the green. The Dow's up about 240 points. The big tech earnings parade begins today. Tesla and Google report later this afternoon. The key to future performance comes with the call. That's after the numbers have been released and the company holds a Q&A with analysts about profits, products, market share down the road. At the moment, those two stocks, which report later this afternoon, down very slightly. As for interest rates this Wednesday morning, holding at lower levels, just 4.36% on the 10-year. As for the 2-year, you're well below the 4% level. You're back to 385. Little change for Bitcoin. We're looking at 117.9. That's your price. Politics. The president reveals his AI action plan today. He wants to accelerate AI development in America. He wants to make it easier for companies to build data centers. And he wants to get rid of any woke political bias in AI modeling. Former President Obama hits back sharply at President Trump's accusation of treason. Obama says the charge is outrageous, ridiculous, bizarre, and a weak attempt at distraction. All right, on the show today, cracks in the sanctuary city movement. After the Attorney General threatened a lawsuit, Louisville has retreated from its sanctuary status. ICE agents will be informed when criminal migrants are held in city jails. Pam Bondi is also suing Los Angeles and New York. Throughout the show, we're going to be checking big tech. Nothing moves the market like Mag 7 stocks. Their earnings season starts today. Big deal. And it's Wednesday, July the 23rd, 2025.
And that was Stuart Varney. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now the preamble to the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now little Giorgia Meloni.
In seconda lettura il disegno di legge costituzionale sulla separazione delle carriere tra chi accusa e chi giudica, sul sorteggio per l'individuazione dei componenti del CSM, su una giustizia disciplinare per i magistrati non condizionata dall'appartenenza correntizia. È un passo avanti fondamentale. Servono ovviamente altri 2 passaggi parlamentari per portare a compimento una riforma costituzionale che l'Italia aspetta da troppo tempo e che ha un triplice obiettivo: garantire ai cittadini il diritto al giusto processo che è sancito dalla Costituzione, disarticolare il sistema correntizio all'interno del CSM, restituire ai magistrati l'autorevolezza e la dignità che meritano. Andremo avanti con decisione. La seconda notizia riguarda un altro impegno che abbiamo preso con gli italiani, ovvero quello di scrivere un nuovo piano carceri che ci consentisse di ristrutturare e ampliare le strutture esistenti, realizzarne di nuove, valorizzare quegli immobili storici che non sono più adatti a ospitare un carcere. Oggi in Consiglio dei Ministri abbiamo varato un piano straordinario di interventi che ci farà farà avere, con opere in cantiere già oggi e con il termine dei lavori al 2027, circa 10.000 nuovi posti detentivi, con un investimento complessivo di oltre 750 milioni di euro. Stiamo lavorando per aggiungere altri 5.000 posti, in modo da colmare l'intero divario che c'è tra le presenze e i posti disponibili. In altre parole, in passato si adeguavano i reati al numero dei posti disponibili nelle carceri. Noi riteniamo viceversa che uno Stato giusto debba adeguare la capienza delle carceri al numero di persone che devono scontare una pena. Quindi, finalmente, certezza della pena. Parallelamente continueremo lo sforzo che abbiamo portato avanti finora per coprire i vuoti di organico della polizia penitenziaria. Il nostro obiettivo è prevedere 1.000 extra assunzioni già nella prossima legge di bilancio. Insieme al piano carceri, è la terza notizia che voglio darvi, abbiamo approvato un provvedimento molto significativo, e cioè un disegno di legge che offre a una persona tossicodipendente che ha commesso reati chiaramente correlati alla droga la possibilità di espiare la pena fino al tetto di 8 anni di reclusione in regime di detenzione domiciliare all'interno di una comunità terapeutica e di iniziare in quella comunità un reale, concreto, verificabile percorso di recupero. E così abbiamo raccolto le richieste delle comunità terapeutiche. Fin dal momento dell'arresto il tossicodipendente può scegliere la comunità invece del carcere, e in questo modo quella persona recupera se stessa, si eleva complessivamente il livello di sicurezza una volta che viene eliminata anche la molla che conduce a delinquere. Insomma, penso che sia stata una giornata di risposte concrete, di risultati e di impegni che vengono mantenuti, perché questo è quello che sappiamo fare meglio: rispettare la parola data e il programma che abbiamo presentato ai cittadini.
And that was Giorgia Maloney. Back in a minute.
Thank you. And now from a book that's called Good Inside. What's the opposite of understanding? For this argument's sake, it's convincing. Convincing is the attempt to prove a singular reality, to prove that only one thing is true. Convincing is an attempt to be right, and as a result make the other person wrong. It rests on the assumption that there's only one correct viewpoint. And then my question is this supposed to be convincing? Further, convincing has one goal in mind, being right. And here's the unfortunate consequence of being right. The other person feels unseen and unheard, at which point most people become infuriated and combative, because it feels as if the other person does not accept your realness or worth. Feeling unseen and unheard makes connection impossible. Understanding two things are true and convincing one thing is true are diametrically opposed ways of approaching other people, so a powerful first step in any interaction is to notice which mode you're in. When you're in one thing is true mode, you're judgmental of and reactive to someone else's experience because it feels like an assault on your own truth. As a result, you will seek to prove your own point of view, which in turn makes the other person defensive because they need to uphold the realness of their experience. In one thing is true mode, exchanges escalate quickly. Each person thinks they're arguing about the content of the conversation when in fact they're trying to defend that they are a real, worthy person with a real, truthful experience. And again, is this convincing? Back in a minute.
Thank you. Now a little clip from the Rockford Files.
Your whole problem is this thing is you have never worked a con. You see, in a con, you just don't dump out all the information for the mark. You make him come and get it while you look like you're holding something back. That way the mark does all the work. He thinks he's the smart one. That's when he's hooked.
So there you go. So that's the same thing that the Democrats have a tendency to do. They pull little con jobs. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, what does the phrase, if you're explaining you're losing, mean in debates? This was said by Ronald Reagan, speaking of political campaigns. From the perspective of your audience, if you have to explain yourself, you come off looking desperate to convince. As a consequence, you lose the high ground. From a more philosophical perspective, when you have a clear conscience and strong conviction towards the positions you take, your values, truth, and direction, you don't need the opinions or consent of others. As a consequence, you don't need to explain yourself. However, if you yourself are not convinced of the validity and truth of your position, or you can't fully justify your choices, then you continue to expel words in an attempt to create the illusion of certainty. Back in a minute. Thank you. So a bit of a personal note here. Yesterday's podcast, Trump Tuesday, on YouTube was blocked universally. Everywhere for all time, apparently, by YouTube for whatever reasons that they do these things. So if you want to partake of that particular podcast, you can get it on Spreaker and on CastBox and other sources, but you're not going to find it on YouTube. Back in a minute.
Es para España, créanme, un socio fiable y con una gran potencialidad, con grandes oportunidades. Así lo vivimos y así lo sentimos. Estamos en un muy buen momento de nuestra relación bilateral, presidente, pero nos sigue quedando muchísimo espacio para estrechar nuestros lazos, para impulsar desarrollo de negocios entre nuestros países. Animo, por tanto, a las empresas españolas a que sigan explorando las oportunidades que ofrece Paraguay. Yo creo que el acuerdo Unión Europea-Mercosur, la entrada en vigor del nuevo convenio para evitar la doble imposición, abre nuevas oportunidades y, por supuesto, pues animo también a las empresas paraguayas con vocación de internacionalización a que miren a España y nos consideren su puente con Europa al otro lado del Atlántico. Tenemos 160.000 paraguayos y paraguayas que contribuyen al desarrollo económico de mi país, de España, y le puedo decir, presidente, que estamos muy agradecidos de esa contribución paraguaya al bienestar de España. Por tanto, animo también a las empresas paraguayas en esa vocación. Y quiero terminar diciendo que estoy convencido de que a este encuentro empresarial le van a seguir muchos más, tanto públicos como privados, que nos van a ayudar a profundizar aún más el buen momento de nuestras relaciones bilaterales, que nos van a permitir seguir haciendo camino juntos. Así que muchas gracias, presidente Peña, por tu hospitalidad y gracias a todos ustedes por creer en esta especial relación bilateral que tiene el Paraguay con España y que tiene también España con el Paraguay. Paraguay es para España,
And that was Sanchez. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now, Candace.
Je continue avec ce gouvernement de cancre. D'ailleurs, je crois que je vais faire un live tellement que je suis énervée. Toutes les personnes françaises qui ont un passeport français, à qui on donne des cotisations à toute balle, le gouvernement, et que toutes ces personnes en situation de handicap, qui sortent d'AVC ou autre, il n'y a rien, c'est la pénurie, c'est l'errance médicale dans tout. Vous êtes occupés à filer du fric dans tous les pays en guerre et compagnie. Donnez l'asile politique en veux-tu, en voilà dans notre pays, mais on en a ras-le-bol. Occupez-vous des Français. Filez notre argent aux personnes qui en ont besoin. Et faites en sorte qu'il y ait des praticiens à toute balle. Des orthophonistes, des kinés. Mais vous êtes la honte absolue. On n'a jamais vu un gouvernement pareil. Le système de santé est vraiment à la dérive. Moi, j'arrive pas à comprendre que personne ne dit rien du tout. C'est pas possible. Ne disent rien. Je parle mon latin. J'en peux plus de tout ça. C'est inadmissible. Je répète 15 fois. C'est plus possible. C'est plus possible.
And that was Candace. Back in a minute. Thank you. So the semi-scandal about President Obama leading the charge on the Russiagate issue, where you had the false documents and whatnot. And it just occurred to me, I was looking at a clip on social media, and it had a picture of Tulsi Gabbard and Pam Bondi. And I immediately thought, you know what? The only reason that former President Obama is objecting to any of this is because he's a misogynist. How about that? Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, Apollo.
3. The process was the shaping of flight operations into a brotherhood. For an extended period from 1959 until the mid-1960s, the new Flight Operations Division was continually hiring new people. But whereas other divisions within the Space Task Group hired a mixture of new college graduates and people out of industry, the Flight Operations Division hired almost nothing but new college graduates. Furthermore, Kraft looked for a particular kind of person. He wasn't worried about grades. A B or sometimes even a C average could be good enough. In fact, the straight A student wasn't likely to be right for flight operations. Kraft wanted people who weren't locked into a standard engineering career path. He wanted people who enjoyed nosing around in many different areas and who knew that they were going to have to work hard to succeed. Most of all, he looked for applicants who were fascinated by spaceflight and who couldn't believe their good fortune when they were given the opportunity to work 60-hour weeks at a civil service salary, as long as they were working for the space program. When these youngsters, 21 and 22 years old, came to work, they found themselves in one of the most glamorous jobs in the program. They didn't sit at drafting tables drawing electrical circuits or designs for valves. They were the guardians of the astronauts. They went to exotic places, Hawaii and Bermuda, Carnarvon on the northwest coast of Australia, Kano in the interior of Nigeria, Tananarivo in the Indian Ocean, ships and islands throughout the world to man the remote sites. They had as their leaders the redoubtable Williams, possessing everything to inspire awe in 22-year-old males but a silk scarf around his neck, and Kraft, who, as Williams left more and more of the daily operation to him, became the revered leader. Kraft was the model for flight controller cool, taking in bad news without changing expression or tone of voice, making decisions quickly, controlling people and events as the situation demanded. He had the indefinable quality called presence as well. I've seen people argue and argue and argue with him, trying to get their way, one controller recalled. He'd look at them very casually and he'd say, "I have your input." And it would just terminate the conversation. Just terminate the guy into a dummy load, is what we used to say. People idolized Kraft and wanted to be like him, another controller said, speaking of the youngsters coming into flight operations fresh out of college. For a while back in the early 1960s, the young Glyn Lunny wore the same kind of loafers, smoked the same kind of cigars, held his cigar in the same way as Kraft. Gene Kranz, with his fighter pilot experience, saw himself in his early days with flight operations as Kraft's wingman. He would arrive at Mercury Control long before Kraft and test everything on Kraft's console, check out every communications loop, then make sure his own console was prepared so that in the event of a failure on Kraft's console, Kraft could step over to exactly the same setup on Kranz's. "I was probably overkilling it a bit," Kranz said, "but I wasn't going to let my lead guy get shot down." So there they were, young, male in a high-pressure job, often the only one they'd ever known, many of them single, spending most of their waking hours together, often in remote overseas outposts, led by men they idolized. The result was more or less what one would expect of such a mix of circumstances. Male bonding, a phrase no flight controller would be caught dead using, on a grand scale, and a kind of closeness that many of them would never know again. Along with the excitement went the hell-raising in which groups of young men are prone to indulge. In Houston, where some had families and they were working all the time anyway, it was pretty tame, volleyball and beer, or reasonably discreet. At the remote sites and the Cape, the hell-raising got a little more exciting, much of it involving cars, driven into the surf off Cocoa Beach, for example, women, Australia was an especially popular duty station, and more beer. The controllers had their own legends of outrageous flight controller behavior arising from the adventures of free spirits such as Ed Fendel, John Hatcher, and above all, John Llewellyn. They had their own language. While they were working a mission in the control center, they communicated in short bursts of acronyms and abbreviations and code words that made it impossible for an outsider to have any idea what they were talking about. After work, drinking beer at the flintlock or the singing wheel, they would add to the acronyms and the jargon their own figures of speech. A Saturn didn't ascend to orbit, it went up the hill. One didn't make inquiries of someone, one pulsed him. To fall asleep was to go to poo, referring to program P00, which reset the onboard computers to zero. Then, for reasons that remain unexplained, the controllers mixed their technological slang with their medievalisms, yea verily, for example, and it came to pass, and thou shalt. Sometimes it seemed that the controllers lacked only decoder rings and a treehouse. Kraft consciously reinforced the Band of Brothers atmosphere in flight operations. As long as you were part of the Brotherhood, he would defend you against any charge to anyone outside. In one of the classic John Llewellyn stories, Llewellyn, who had been assigned to coordinate the recovery team for one of the early missions, decided unilaterally that the Navy ought to add an extra ship to the recovery task force. The Navy did, and sent a bill for something like $1 million to Gilruth. As the story is told by the controllers, Gilruth called Kraft to his office and asked what this was all about. Kraft got Llewellyn on the phone, listened for a while, hung up, turned to Gilruth, and said simply, "Pay the $1 million." That's the way Kraft was with his people. "He's got to be the best motivator of people I ever had anything to do with," said Rod Lowe of Kraft. For example, said Lowe, during Gemini, Lowe, a flight controller for the environmental control system, was worried about one of his subsystems. He couldn't get the contractor in charge of it to pay any attention to him. Lowe was just a little guy. Kraft somehow heard about this, and when a few days later the contractor people were discussing another problem with Kraft, Kraft casually walked over to Lowe and put his arm on his shoulder and asked, "What do you think, Rod?" That's all it took. "Rod? Who's Rod?" "Those guys didn't know who Rod was," Lowe said. "But from then on, those guys started looking me up to get my opinion because they thought, God, Kraft listens to this guy." It didn't take many such episodes to build a lot of loyalty among Kraft's people. If, on the other hand, you were part of flight operations and decided that it was time to move on to something else, you were likely to be cast into outer darkness. Who could want to leave the best place to work in the whole space program? Kraft would let you know that you were making a mistake. "Young man," he would begin. To be called young man meant you had better listen carefully. To be called sir meant that you were already in deep trouble. And then he would launch into an explanation of all the reasons why you were better off in flight operations than in this other job, no matter how tempting it might seem from a distance. If you persisted, perhaps you could get him to agree, and in that case he would help you get the transfer and maybe a promotion to boot. But under no circumstances was it advisable to try to go around Kraft and get yourself transferred without his blessing. A few people did that, and soon thereafter they decided to leave NASA, or, at the least, to get out of Houston. It was all part of being in an exclusive and absorbing club called Flight Operations. "We were on an absolute high," Lenny said of those days. "You can't imagine how excited we all were." Also, being so young helped keep the controllers from being awed by the fact that, after all, they were only kids and there would be live astronauts up there. Lenny again. "We had a few guys who came into flight operations who had been around a while, and they had trouble believing that they were able to do what they were doing. I had a guy who was uncomfortable with it, and he used to ask me, 'How can you have the confidence to do this?' My reaction was, 'Well, how the hell do I know? I don't go around analyzing that, I just do it.' The people who'd been around for a while maybe had been blunted. They didn't do too well. The people who came in new out of school, they didn't know any better. They didn't know they shouldn't do things or couldn't do things, or that life was going to beat them up sooner or later. The confidence and the closeness were to be indispensable to the way that flight operations function during crises."
And that was part 3 of Apollo, by Charles Murray and Catherine Bly Cox. Back in a minute.
"
Thank you, thank you. This is Ron, your host, the only true conservative in the United States today, bidding adios to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there, and reminding you that skepticism is doubtful.